Okay, want to respect your time and thank you for being here today. We're going to be discussing how to plan for surviving a data disaster, and that could cover a lot of territory. I hope that by the end of this, that you will be comfortable with your existing solution or have some ideas in mind that you can use to improve the solution that you are currently operating under. My name is Barry Utesch, and I'm the president of Total Computer Solutions. We've been in the IT industry for coming up 29 years, and so I've been through a lot of evolution as IT has changed and grown, and data disaster is protecting our clients from that is certainly one of the most important things that we do. If you lose your data, you are in trouble as a business today. And in some ways, now is a great time to be discussing this. The tornado that tore through Greensboro several months ago if you drive on that part of town, there's still devastation that's being cleaned up. And we didn't have any customers that were impacted directly by that. And yet I'm sure there were businesses that had difficulty operating after that storm traveled through their neighborhood. So imagine with me for just a moment that, as you're exiting this meeting, that your phone rings, your cell phone rings, and some type of data disaster has struck your business. Do you know who to call? Do you know what you're going to do next? And how are you feeling right now? Again, hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll have a comfort level for you so that you'll know and be ready to act should that unfortunate circumstances strike your organization. So if you're an astute mathematician like I am, you recognize that, that this does not add up to 100%, but it does give us a general idea about data loss issues and where do they come from. And it is interesting, is it not, that 60% of the time it's human error. But again, updates and patches, you know, we want to patch, we want to update, we want to protect ourselves from malware and malicious code that's out there. And one of the best ways to do that is to keep up to date with patching. And yet, you know, historically, that can create some problems. I will, in Microsoft's defense, say that they are a lot better today than they were 5 to 7 years ago. As a business, we used to stay a minimum of 30 days behind on patching, and we considered that to be prudent. Today, we are much more confident, at least from the standpoint of security updates, of applying those quickly, typically within the same week that they're released. And again, you see the low number on this screen is 10% earthquakes. Again, they're not really addressing floods, tornadoes, thunderstorms, ice storms, etc. But by and large, the issues that are major natural catastrophes are a much smaller percentage than the others. So I want to pause here for just a moment and make a distinction. And that distinction is between a backup solution that is designed to help you recover from a disaster, and a high availability solution, which is a completely different animal. It may be that your company needs both, and there may be a way to combine them, but typically you need to look at them as two distinct products. High availability may be necessary, or almost certainly is necessary, for hospitals, airlines, hotel chains, where they need to be able to take an order at any moment. Certainly most web commercial or e-commerce websites need high availability. But again, high availability is where we don't go down, or if we have an issue, we can get back in minutes. That's different than backups. And I guess I'll try to make that distinction with if at my business we have a spreadsheet that we really only use once a quarter. So it's used to record our quarterly numbers, and that is shared with our banker or our accountant or whoever. If I update that spreadsheet today and I save it, and unbeknownst to me, that file for whatever reason gets corrupted as I save it, I'm not aware that that file is corrupted until 3 months from now when I go to open that file. And that's when I get an error message that says it's corrupted. That's when I need to make sure that I have a good backup where I can go back to before that save and be able to pull that file. High availability by its very nature, the moment I saved that file, it was replicated to my secondary server, and that secondary server file was now corrupted as well. So a high availability solution solves one set of problems, but it doesn't solve the other set. So again, today's conversation is predominantly focused on the backup idea. We will touch a little bit more on high availability and where that might be a fit, but that's not the topic that we're going to be predominantly dealing with today. So there's three main things that we see that are create data loss, data downtime. We see water damage, of course, the bad patches, bad updates, those types of things. What are the other types of issues? You see the snake coming out of the back of that computer. That's obviously fairly rare, although we have seen where a mouse got into a computer and relieved itself, and it was killed when it was shocked to death, but also the computer was killed at the same time. Hard drives going bad, overheating, all kinds of different issues. It is amazing to us how often we see sprinkler heads in server rooms. Any large commercial building is really required by the fire department to have sprinklers in every room, and the server room is no exception. And obviously that's a problem if there's a fire in another part and the sprinklers go off, they are going to destroy your servers. I was in a potential client's server room the other day, and they had fashioned a metal shield, and it basically circled half of the sprinkler head, such that if that sprinkler went off, it was not going to spray water directly on the servers. It was still going to wet the room, but it wasn't going to destroy the servers directly. I thought that was a pretty creative idea. Again, the natural disasters probably get the headline news, whether it's floods or fires or tornadoes or whatever it is. I want to talk just a moment about Hurricane Katrina. Prior to Hurricane Katrina, most large companies had their secondary data center in the event of a disaster was typically a block or two away from their corporate office, and they did that so that the IT department could get to it easily, that they could if they needed to make adjustments or changes, or if they needed to run tapes over to that other facility, they could do so fairly easily. But all of that changed with Hurricane Katrina. And I don't remember what the exact mileage like that was impacted by Katrina, but it was, excuse me, it was significant. It was 300 or 400 miles in and around New Orleans and Louisiana. And as a result, most corporations now place their secondary data operations at least 200 miles away from their corporate office. And so in some ways it was a learning experience, and folks have even built a better protection for their data centers than what they had previously. But as you can probably imagine, that's a pain to have to go so far. We actually had a client, and this is going back quite a while ago, but that was impacted by a tornado. Fortunately, this particular client had a solution where they backed up locally, but then that information was also transmitted off-site. And the IT person for this company talked about, going into the server room when there was still rain, because it tore the roof off, so there was rain dripping in, and he scooped up the backup appliance and carried it to one of their other locations where they were able to recover pretty quickly from that disaster. So when you have this type of an issue, I would contend that your customers or those that you serve will be very understanding. Obviously, this was front page news in the newspaper. It was on the nightly news. And so those bars, restaurants, etc., that did business with CAFI, they were probably very understanding if they were unable to replenish their coolers with Miller Lite for a day or two. That's not going to be the same story if, for example, somebody is moving equipment in and out of the server room, and knocks a plug out of the wall or bumps an on-off switch, and your servers go down. That's fairly isolated incident, and it's not going to work as well to say to your client, oh yeah, well the cleaning crew was moving the mops and the buckets in and out of the server room and accidentally knocked the plug out of the wall. They're just not going to be as understanding. And so again, we want to be thinking about that as we look at the various types of disasters that can affect our data. You probably saw this in the news. That's not been that long ago. Mecklenburg County, one of their employees opened an email attachment. The hackers were demanding $23,000, which really in hindsight was probably a bargain, but it affected an awful lot of servers, and they had to resort to paper processes as a county, and that was, I am certain, very painful, not just for the county itself, but for all those that use the services of the county. I don't know about your business, but we would be hard pressed to move back to a paper system. And in many cases, it's just not feasible for you to run and operate as a business on paper. One of the other ones was the Rockingham County Schools. That was again on the news. A user clicked on a Microsoft Word attachment, and there were 20 servers that had to be rebuilt. It took them almost 30 days to get things back going. The project just to get recovered was about $300,000. But then the bigger project, which was put in play to try to get ahead of this type of a problem, was obviously even more significant, more than $750,000. As a business, as an IT business, 5 years ago, our primary concerns for our clients were really centered around equipment failure, software, some software patches and updates breaking things, or tornadoes, ice storms, those types of things. Those were the things that were causing our customers to have downtime. Today, that isn't the case. These last two slides is really that's what we struggle with. We struggle with phishing emails. That is predominantly, I think 80% of the time, what the reason someone gets breached or gets infected is because an email has come into the business and a user has clicked on it. Viruses are still out there, but certainly much less prevalent than what they were in the past. And again, the problem with ransomware is that it is so profitable. And because of that, the market for ransomware is growing exponentially. And so this really has become our biggest nemesis. And again, if your systems are down and people are calling into your office and your response is, well, we got hacked and so our stuff is down, somewhat understanding, especially if they've experienced it themselves. But it's kind of one of those isolated problems. I don't believe that they're going to be nearly as understanding as they would be if you'd been hit by a tornado or you'd had a fire, that type of thing. So we have a problem, and how does that affect us, right? What are the consequences? If we've had a major disaster, our phones may be down, our email may be down, our website could be down. Again, important to have multiple ways to be able to reach out to clients. Can we get any work done? If you're in a production environment, the lines may be able to continue to run. You may be able to continue to produce product, whereas if you're in a accounting firm or a law firm, medical facility, you may not be able to get work done, or the work that you're getting done may be kind of low value work. So again, natural disaster, building is burned, hit by a tornado. Can I see clients and patients? Have I thought about where would we go for temporary space, right? Do I have a client that maybe is a large client that would allow me to use their conference room? Or are there potentially some rooms in a hotel that could be rented and you set up a sort of a command center temporarily? Again, can I deliver goods and services? Could Kathy have gone to their competitor and said, hey, can you guys, we've got product, we just don't have a way to get it to our clients, and would you be willing to help us with that? I lost an employee a number of years ago, maybe it's 10 years ago, to a sudden heart attack. And I had a competitor call me very, very sincerely and say, hey, I had that happen to me a few years ago. I know how difficult it was, and I'm calling to see if there's anything I can do to help you, which I thought was very nice. So again, when you have that type of situation, is it possible that you could reach out to a competitor or a supplier? They might even provide you with temporary warehouse space. But again, these are things that need to be thought through ahead of time so that when the time comes, you can execute quickly. So your company really does need a well-designed backup strategy. So this slide tells us that about a third of companies do not test their backups. And of the 2/3 that do test their backup, about 3/4 of those have found backup failures. I don't like to use that word, but it's in the slide, but I would say backup issues, right? So I might have run a full backup and a small portion of that was faulty, or it may have failed altogether. But again, if 77% of the time they're finding issues with their backup, it really speaks to the fact that if you are running backups, somebody needs to be taking a look to make sure that those backups ran properly, and they run properly, every time. 60% of companies that lose their data for 10 or more days file for bankruptcy within a year. Those are some disturbing statistics, but you could certainly understand why 10 days without your data, people would begin to think that you were just out of business. And so that's somewhat frightening. One of the ways, if you don't have a good backup, you may try to recover data from a hard drive. And we have seen companies do that over the years when the situation was fairly catastrophic and they just didn't have any other choices. And that's an expensive proposition just to do the data recovery. And that when you pay for that, typically they don't guarantee that they can get your information back, or they'll, and even if they can get back 90% of a database, that really doesn't do you any good if there's big holes in your database. If they could bring back 90% of your individual Word files or individual Excel files, that might be valuable. But with a database, it's kind of all or nothing. So a well-designed backup strategy is timely. What do I mean when I say timely? When we used to back up to tape, the backups would run, they would kick off at say 11 o'clock at night, and then they would finish sometime in the early morning hours, and then people would be able to get back into the systems when they came in the morning. And that was an acceptable time frame. Today, I would suggest that most companies wouldn't be satisfied with or comfortable with that level of timeliness. They would want something that backs up more frequently, midday, twice a day, or for many of our clients, we're backing up every 2 hours. So we back up just the things that have changed in the last 2 hours, and then that information is collapsed into a single record, if you will, and then also sent off site. Complete. I want to talk a little bit here about there's some inexpensive ways to back up to the internet, right? So if you're backing up your QuickBooks files through Mozy Pro or Carbonite or one of those to the internet, that's great, and that certainly is better than nothing. However, I would suggest that because you're not backing up the complete server, you are slowing down the recovery process. And whoops, sorry. What I mean by that is if I back up using a Mozy Pro or Carbonite and my server hard drive crashes, the vendor, hopefully you've got a warranty on it. Dell arrives, they put a new hard drive in it. Now I need to reinstall my operating system. Now I need to reinstall my application. And then I pull my data down from Carbonite or Mozy Pro and put that back on the system. Now, hopefully, all of that works flawlessly. But the reality is, if I just installed the operating system, I may have to do a bunch of patching to that operating system. If I've just installed that application from CDs, there may be a bunch of patching that needs to happen to that application. And so again, the process of getting back operational, if there were any special keys, and when I say keys, I mean like security keys that are installed or license keys, I guess would be a better way to say that, to say that you have 5 users or 10 users or 20 users. Are those keys automatically installed, or do I have to get on the phone? So all that, if I was doing a full backup of my server, where what they call an image, all of that information would be in my backup. And so now I could do what they call is a bare metal restore, and I could get my server back more quickly than having to piece it back together. So again, timely, how often, complete, am I getting a whole backup or am I just backing up data? Monitored. If nobody's watching to make sure that the backup ran properly, we would suggest that you are making a huge mistake. Backups do fail with some frequency. We sell a number of different backup solutions, and part of what we sell is the monitoring of those. So we've got somebody who that's what they do. They make sure that everything ran properly last night, and that's just a huge piece. In many cases, when a company has an internal IT person, this is one of those things that often gets skipped. And I'm not picking on that person. What I'm saying is they're so busy doing user-facing issues that they don't have time to to make sure that the backups ran last night. They walk in the door and 6 people pounce on them. Tested, again, going back to when we used to back up a lot to tape, every month we would mount a tape and we would restore files from it. And the reason that we did that is because over time we found that somebody would be backing up to tape, and they were very faithful in doing that every day. And then when a catastrophe happened and they needed to restore from tape, oops, we can't read the tapes. And so by mounting a tape, restoring a file from the tape, we confirmed that the tape backups were working. So we were testing regularly. Now we do that with virtually, if you will. We pull up a virtual server, restore a file, but we make sure that we can gain access to that server, and we do that regularly. Offsite, again, if your building is hit by a fire, tornado, flood, if you don't have your data offsite, there is the potential to lose your data completely. And again, I know a lot of smaller businesses, they back up to hard drives, external hard drives, and they rotate those hard drives around to not use the same one every night. But if they're not getting that hard drive off site, there is the potential that a fire would destroy all of their data. And then last, but certainly not least, is automation. Again, we had a person in our office who was responsible for trading out tapes or trading out hard drives. That person was also responsible for taking those tapes and hard drives to the bank, and we would keep them in the safe deposit box. And so this was something that they did on a routine basis. And that worked pretty well until that person was sick, until that person was out for a few days on vacation or some kind of a medical leave, and then they really, frankly, weren't being done. And so Murphy's Law says that during the time when it's not being done, that's when you'll have a potential problem. So we would suggest that automating is critical to the backup strategy process. Well, we've reached the end, and I do want to open the floor for questions. I think you can click, there's a place that you can click in chat, and we'll certainly be willing to field your questions, and happy to do that. Hopefully, through this process, you've recognized some areas that maybe you need to improve on your backup solution. If you have interest, TCS is offering as part of your attendance today a free backup assessment. We'll actually come out to your office. We'll look at what you're doing now. We'll make some recommendations on maybe ways to improve that. And so that's something that is available to you as part of this part of this presentation, if you'll simply email sales@tcsusa.com, give us your contact information, and we will be happy to set a time to come out and assist you in looking at your backup solutions. So again, thank you so much for being here today. Sincerely appreciate taking your time. And if you will bear with us for just a few moments while we field some questions. Thank you so much.